The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference. I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today I am so pleased to have the following guest on my show. She is an author, most importantly, and the book that she has now authored is called Parenting Our Parents, Transforming the Challenge into a Journey of Love. And as a result of the work that Jane, her name, by the way, is Jane Wolfe Francis. As a result of the work that Jane is doing, she's really reaching out to people to understand that Parenting Our Parents Foundation, which she runs and is the CEO of, is a very important organization, especially today when people are getting older sooner and sooner. Our baby boomers are now becoming parents themselves of parents that they had, and it's really a very difficult job, and she's going to tell you how you can make it better. So with that said, I would like to welcome Jane Wolfe Francis to the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction, Susan. I'm very pleased to be here with you and your audience. And I think perhaps the most key point to help people is to invite them to see a stage of life when we have aging parents. Perhaps we're lucky enough to have aging parents, to not be seen as a challenge and an overwhelm and a burden, things that are being taken away, but as the second part of my book title says, a journey of love for all the generations involved, the aging parent, the senior parents, whom I call pop parents, for parenting our parents. It's the generation of people who have senior parents, and often for the pop parents' children, even grandchildren, to see how when a teamwork comes together of family and professionals, how an older person's life can really be up-leveled for enjoyment, for health, and for everybody's benefit, really become a journey of love. So that's the shift in our thinking that I'd like to invite people to take a thought on, take a grip on, talk about it perhaps with people in your family, see what they think.
Yes. I'll tell you something, Jane. I have to get personal here because I think that sometimes when even a host of a show talks about this subject or is interviewing somebody who really is involved in this subject, that she kind of gives a little bit of a perspective on this story. Years ago, and I'll speak about something that just happened yesterday.
Okay,
just yesterday,
great.
I said to my husband, I just realized that my mother has been gone for about 10 years, and I am now the parent, and I have a son who is going to have to, and it's just one son, and he's going to have to, kind of contribute to my situation later on in life. And I don't know whether the type who would do something like this. And I think a lot of the people whom I speak with say the same thing. Would our child be able to parent us, and would they be able to do it in a way where they don't think of us as necessarily old? They think of us, though, as a person who happens just to need somebody around them. And that's something I thought about just yesterday. So that initiates the question, how would you suggest, and you use the word initiating as well, a conversation with your aging parent to begin the, as you call, the PLP plan?
Right. So, first of all, I think perhaps the biggest obstacle to having this become a journey of love is, frankly, what I did, and I talk about in my book, perhaps shaming myself for the whole first chapter because I was an expert and I looked away. I didn't want to think about or see that my parents were, of course, getting older. When I finally was forced to see it, when I went to visit with them 3,000 miles across country because they stayed in New York and I was out in California, and although I talked to them on the phone, people can kind of hide things pretty well on the phone. So I was in a state of shock that a lot of people just don't want to see what's ahead, whether they're the aging parent themselves or whether they're somebody who has a mom and a dad, like your son, who at some point going to need, want, hope for, be interested in perhaps reconvening the family in a kind of nice way, perhaps resembling more when everybody lived together years ago, in terms of creating a teamwork. And so if we don't do what I did, which is a lot why I wrote this book, so other people could benefit from my mistakes here and have a much easier time of it. So if we don't look away, if we look ahead, and we have the courage to begin a conversation, it really could begin at any time. It could begin when someone gets the flu. You could be 45 years old and get the flu, and your 20-year-old son could say to you, "Hey, Mom, what are you going to do when you're old and you get the flu?" Or you might say, "I have the flu, I feel awful, but, it makes me think, what am I going to do ahead with you living so far away, son?" Somebody, presumably the pop parents, but somebody needs to have some courage and look at how can we make this all a better situation ahead and not do, again, what I did, which was at the instance when I realized that their home and health were completely a shambles, was not do the crisis planning, but do the planning ahead. And all of a sudden, things begin to shift. People have an opportunity to get involved. We see very quickly, for example, with older parents, it's very helpful to get some paperwork underway.
Now, when you talk about paperwork, are you talking about a will or any other situation that, is very important for them to take care of at a certain stage?
But also this whole area of patient privacy, we call HIPAA, confidentiality. I mean, it is something that we can sign off on and include our spouses and our children that we'd like to know about things to have information so that they can talk to a doctor. They can find out what's going on. I just had an incident with a college roommate who couldn't show up for a reunion, and we were trying to figure out what's going on. Who can we talk to? Does anybody know her daughter's email, or how do we get in touch with the husband? Getting some information so that you can look ahead and think, well, it would be really nice to get some comfort so that once you begin to get people enrolled, you have some plans, you have some paperwork, then we can begin to avoid what I think is one of the worst killers, which is stress, anxiety, worry.
Right.
It's really killing us.
I agree with you.
27.
I'll tell you something, Jane. There's another situation that I had that I'm going to relate again to you, and that is when I said to my son, it happened to be my birthday, and I happened to be out in California and visiting with my son and his wife and my new grandchild, and I said to him, Robert, it is my birthday, and I'm getting older, and he wouldn't deal with it. He thought it was, and I said, you should know where things are, and his response to me was, not now. We don't have to talk about this right now, which is a situation that I think a lot of my friends have had, where their children won't accept the fact that they're getting older.
Yeah, and I think, one approach to that, and not recommending it for everyone, but you and I are having this conversation about you and Robert, your son, and one approach to him when it isn't your birthday and maybe there aren't quite so many people around or whatever, is to say, Robert, I would like you to do something for me and your father. I would like you to hear that we would like you to know where things are so that we can worry less. We've done a lot for you in your time. I think, really, being straightforward with people, I think you might consider how you can help us have a less concerned 60th birthday or whatever it is for you. I just made that number up. How I can have a better 7th decade here, because I know you have some idea where things are and what our interests and desires are as we age. And Robert, I've always been the one who's had to, be your mom. Let me show you a little bit about how to conduct this part of our life cycle so that everybody could really enjoy it more. We don't have to sit here and bemoan the fact that we're mortal, but we can deal appropriately, plan ahead, and then particularly go and have some fun because we've taken care of some of the paperwork and some of the worry and that you and your husband might have that he doesn't know where the keys to the safe deposit box are or whatever.
Now, let me ask you something, Jane. When there's a daughter-in-law involved,
yes,
what suggestions do you make to your son or to your daughter at that point? A daughter-in-law or a son-in-law? What about that?
Well, what I'd like to say generally is it's very hard to answer anybody's personal life and use that as one of the things that I've created is a coaching program. We get coached on how to play basketball and how to do all kinds of things in life, change careers. This is one of the most important things, and I've set up a certified coaching program so people can do certified, work with someone, guidance over the years as they grow and change and age. So I'll try and answer your question because I want to be straightforward, but I don't want your audience to say, well, that's what works for them, and therefore I should do that. That's not good advice, and I don't like to give that kind of advice. I like to say you need to be appropriate with what's going on in your family, and its families are each different, and people age differently. You and your husband will age differently. Women age differently from men. Women who are now 60 age differently from women who were 60, 50 years ago. So there's lots and lots of changes going on. And rather than running away from the conversations, what I aim to do with people as a psychotherapist, which I am, as a lawyer, which I am, as a coach, which I am, is to bring reality into our existence and say, let's deal with it and let's not push it away and not think about it. And again, it took me 3 times to write this book and 10 years to put it out because I was so embarrassed that I didn't do it myself. So I'm going to urge everybody, you got a daughter-in-law? She's part of the family. She will be presumably involved with you and your aging and your grandchildren, however young they may be now, 15, 20 years from now. They may be the people who want you to be sitting there while they're playing football or soccer or whatever kids play in 15 or 20 years. Because you're the best sideline cheerer in the whole country as far as your grandkid is concerned. You see, part of what I see is when we have children, we look to find the purpose in their life, to educate them, to widen them. And that's the beauty of taking this whole cycle of life, the pop cycle as I call it, as a time to broaden and enrich the contributions of our aging people who have an awful lot to offer, I'd like to say. And in many instances, people come to me saying, even my older patients, I'd like to buy 4 copies of your book, 1 for me and 3 for my kids.
Well, that's very good. I'm glad they think that way for you. That's wonderful.
Well, you might buy Robert and his lovely wife
Absolutely. That brings me to the question, Jane. When do you feel is the right time to involve other siblings also, so that your aging loved one can feel supported, not ganged up on? Because that often happens, and there's a lot of weird stuff that families kind of deal with because, again, there are in-laws involved and a lot of other people and situations that are a little complicated. So I'm just curious how you would answer something like that.
Sure. In-laws, outlaws, all kinds of people are get enmeshed and involved. And again, one way all families can do it, and because of the delicacy of what happens when people start talking with and about their aging parents, is often the unresolved issues of childhood present themselves amongst the siblings, Mm-hmm. Well, no wonder you want mom to live near you. You were always her favorite, or whatever. Mm. But I think we can begin to be, first of all, more mature about it, and look at what people's developed strengths are. If you have a brother who's a great financial person, maybe he can help your mom and dad with some of the banking stuff, with some of the investments, with getting themselves on direct deposit from Social Security, with all kinds of little things, big things. So that would be his contribution. Or if there's someone who lives close by and has a particularly good relationship and a nice big car, that person might be the lead person to go to doctor appointments and to be the person to take the phone at the doctor appointment and turn it on speaker and call in the siblings. So everybody has information and gets involved once you're part of a team. How early to do it? It depends on the family. But I think the idea is we have these notions of ganging up as if we're going to take something away. My thrust is we're going to enrich the aging parents, and we're going to enrich the family that may have gotten splintered over time. And I'm not here to say, because I've coached many, many families and done therapy with many intergenerational constructs of people, I'm not going to say it's easy. And that's why I put a program together where those who have some challenges can use a professional, not someone they're going to go to every week like a therapist, but someone who can help people learn to talk to each other, can learn how to rehearse conversations maybe, can figure out who the right person best access information, and get people reminded that they're a family, they're a team. The team might even include, hypothetically, a next-door neighbor who's more involved with your mom and dad than one sibling who lives way across town and it's a half an hour to get there after work, or than another sibling who lives 3 states away. And that person might be very close and have meals with your parents sometimes, and they might form as part of a team, and then in turn your parents might help those people.
Right.
So part of this is a development of community, Susan. I think we're going to have to learn a little bit more about how to have family be community, how to plan ahead, not crisis plan, how to enroll people to do what they do well, what they feel competent in doing, and how to not think of this as like a sneak attack or we're ganging up. And if the parents, aging parents, feel ganged up on, there are many techniques that I recommend in the book as to how to talk with people, where you say to your parents, as you might otherwise be saying, as we said before, in a mock-up conversation with Robert or Robert and his wife, you might be saying with your parents, I had some concerns, or we had some concerns that you might feel ganged up on, and what we really want you to understand is how much we love you and how we can appreciate that, getting up out of a chair may be a little harder than it was 20 years ago, or parking the car at the doctor's office, or remembering to take all the vitamins you take. And we'd like to be here to be part of the good times and to make them longer and better for you. We are not ganging up on anybody except, the cold, hard realities that we all age, and we'd like to have you with us as long and as happily, as functionally, as much as you can contribute. God, would you write those recipes down, Mom? We've been telling you. We need your recipes. Come on, let's do it,
Or do an interview with them, too, Jane, because, leaving a legacy could be one of the most wonderful things, understanding your parents and their background and what they did and some of the advice that they would give once they left. Because some families have wonderful stories to tell that their children don't even know about it. I have something else that I want to ask you. Different cultures have a tendency to act differently to their parents. I worked for quite some time with the Japanese, and in the Japanese culture, the oldest son is the one whose responsibility is to take care of their parents when they get older. But what I did find, and I want to point this out, was that as time went on, the Japanese are changing. The daughter-in-law, or in this case, it's the daughter-in-law, resents the fact that their husband has to take care of their parents. So where does that change come from? It should be the opposite way, and we should be learning from them. Don't you think so? We should be learning from the Japanese what originally the way they thought of their parents is that it is their responsibility to be there for them. And I'm not so sure that we here in the States feel that way. And your book is teaching them, how to deal with it. But on the other hand, look at those cultures. And their parents are like kings and queens, if you will. Don't you agree?
Well, there are many, many different cultures who have many, many different attitudes towards aging. For Japanese, there are 2 or 3 generations, Nisi and so forth, and people are different depending on how long they've been in the American culture as contrasted with how long ago they came over from Japan. And that is true whether people come from Mexico or Iran or anywhere else. Generations have changed and are changing. People are often very involved in raising their own children and having multiple parents out in the work world, which means people cannot always be home with aging parents. Sometimes people move into one homes together. There are all these different kinds of ways. But, my point of view, Susan, and you're asking me, is that I would prefer the word joy to responsibility. I would prefer the notion of making it sacred time of life, making it a special time of life, making it an opportunity for people. You were talking, and I love the word you used, which is legacy. I wanted to just say for a moment, back to the conversation we had before your last question, some of the beauties of today's technology is that we can be interacting with our seniors with our iPhones or our Android phones or whatever, and can take pictures and have conversations and ask them about their legacy and have videotapes for our children, put things together into little movies, have all kinds of ways to expand what it is that our aging parents, grandparents have to share with us that's so special, and that makes everybody involved feel attached and feel better. And I think people are more inclined to do, in our culture, to do things because they want to do it than because they have to do it. So I'm appealing as much I can to the fact that when one does assume those responsibilities, or that those sets of tasks and that role is another way to talk about it. What can occur, and I've seen this time and time again, is healing, is growing up, is finding a way to be even more loving to your parents as you take care of them than they were to you. Because you've matured, you've learned.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a terrific idea and a very thoughtful one, Jane. I think it's amazing. I want to skip to something also that is very important. You know, sometimes our aging loved one feels support, but actually they don't necessarily get it. So what happens when you discover that your parents need a lot more help while visiting with them? And how can children who live far away from their parents and can't visit often watch over their health and well-being? How is that possible?
Well, again, sort of referring to the book, Parenting Our Parents, Transforming the Challenge into a Journey of Love, that is what my story was. Now, my story occurred 20-some-odd years ago, and we were just talking about technology. And I am encouraging people to have the aging parents, some use of technology so that they can talk to them and look at them on the phone, on FaceTime, on a computer or somewhere, and you get a much better sense of what's really going on when you can look a person in the face, when you can say, Mom, you look shrunken down, or you're not eating.
Yeah.
You know, and you can get people to participate with you, again, taking the phone to the doctor's office, asking questions, being involved in events. Your birthday party with Robert. If you had another child who wasn't in California with you, you could all get on the phone. I had a friend recently, people from all over the country got on the phone to celebrate her 70th birthday. They brought her down to the basement and said hi, and there on the computer were people on Skype from all over the country to sing to her. So I'd like us to think about the fact that we're not back in the 90s with the rarity of an occasional involvement or an occasional email. Our aging parents are on Facebook, and there are ways to, again, if we shift the idea that we're not spying on them.
Jane, I have to interrupt you to tell you a story because I'm even chuckling as I think about it. No, I was in the movies the other day, and a woman beside us, you know, I'm in Florida. There's quite a few older people in Florida. And and what was so funny was that a woman is sitting very close to us, and all of a sudden her phone rings. Luckily, the movie hadn't started yet, but people went crazy nevertheless. And what she was doing is she was doing FaceTime with her child to see her new grandson, and everybody in the audience started to yell at her and say, "Get off the phone, get off the phone." But you see here, this was an elderly woman who was actually doing FaceTime with her children. So while it was really not the place and time to be doing it, she did it. She knew how to do it.
Exactly, and I really think there's an awful lot when we visit. We can undermine some of the fears of the technology. And oh my God, you know, if you're sitting there having a bummer of a day and feeling like nobody loves you, and your grandchild calls, "Look at me, Mom, Grandma, I'm on the bicycle. Oh, I got to get off."
Yeah, it could be, as you said, Jane, it's joy. There could be so much joy associated with the relationship between parents and grandparents and children. It really is very possible. But that also leads me to a question that you gave me, which I think is very, very important. And that is, what can we do to support a loved one when they have lost their partner? this is an issue which I believe people really have to come to grips with because it is tough. And what is the suggestions that you would give to our audience about that?
Well, I think the first thing that people in general can do with someone who is grieving is to invite them to talk if they want to. People often have, short-circuited it, their grieving down to a sentence or a paragraph because they don't know how much people really want to hear, get involved, they're nervous, they don't want to start crying. But these are natural things that happen when we lose a loved one. Now, if we're talking about losing a partner and you're 25, that's a very, very unexpected experience. If you're 85, hopefully, again, it's something that you've set in mind as to how it is that when one of you is not there, you're going to be able to live and function and get to the market and have a life. And so, creating a community around us while our partners are alive, creating this warm family environment that we're talking about, is the beginning of how to have time when somebody passes on be less lonely. Now, there's only so much we can do. People have to go through what they go through. Mm-hmm. I recommend that people join support groups. Sometimes if people have a long, recognizable illness, going through support with other people, but activity helps somewhat. Someone might need to go to see a therapist who specializes in grieving, or even a psychiatrist to get medication. If a person had previous bouts with depression, loved one or a friend, dear friend who's sinking, you might just take it on and say, I'm concerned about you. One, again, point of view, because you must have gathered by now, Susan, that my specialty is helping people expand their point of view so that they enjoy life more and function better. It's kind of
it's very clear that you have a perspective on things, and I think your perspective is very, very important. When you mentioned the word joy, I just absolutely, in a sense, jumped for joy because that is so important, to be able to laugh, to be able to share laughter with somebody, stories with somebody. All of that is important, and I'm sure your book addresses that.
Well, I also, with regard to the losing a partner, quote unquote, because I think our language is so important and it so much affects how we think about things, I created this whole language of pop parents, pop teens, pop planning, and the pop cycle. Some people call it popsicle. The time of life when we get the opportunity to give back to somebody who may well have given a lot to us. But in our language, I like to remind people that although their spouse or loved one may have died, and it is their loss, that their partner is not lost to them. I haven't seen my father on the planet since 2004. He's often very present for me. Mm-hmm. I'll find myself saying, oh, Dad would say, and he'd have some silly quote like, rich or poor, it's nice to have money. And I will, he's not lost to me then. He's right there with his humor that makes me laugh, that often makes somebody else laugh. And I like to remind people that just because there is a very personal loss and a lot of whatever each of us needs to do on our own path, that does not mean the person is lost. And again, I think it's important to try and sponge out all the goodness, all the, tell me a happy story about your partner that you'd like me to remember is something you might say to somebody. It'll grieving. Tell me what.
That's right.
Tell me about how you met each other. People love to talk about that. Did you notice
Yeah.
her? Did she notice you? You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we have all kinds of new things, not to the individuals, but new things going on to the culture, where we have gay partners, and how do they relate to the family? And when they're two moms, and you have two aging mothers. And as you said earlier, you know, the Japanese handle it one way.
Sure.
Other people handle it other ways. What's the best way for you and your family, and to get the best out of what your culture has to offer, without necessarily being burdened with something that doesn't any longer feel appropriate in the 21st century?
Yes.
Does that,
well, that
take up your question?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right about everything that you say. But there is a situation that you've expressed to me in an email. And one of the things that you said is that sometimes we don't really understand what our parents are going through. And it could be depression, of course, and it could be Alzheimer's, because the truth of the matter is that we're not around them as much as we should be, for the most part, because today people live all over the country. You know, it used to be where children lived like in the same town as their parents, but today that no longer exists. But once a parent loses a spouse or is now retired, they lose their job, and they find themselves in a situation that maybe they, of course, knew that was going to happen, at least to the extent of their age, but it hits them all at once. So what do you advise? What do you advise the families to do to deal with the person so that they don't have to suffer so much?
Well, let's take it back a step or two, to the point where, again, people, even very educated, well-informed people, often do not suspect, whether out of denial or anything else. You may have read, I don't know, a month or two ago, Dr. Oz confessed to the world that his mother had Alzheimer's and he hadn't noticed. So let's not bemoan our lack of suspicion, and let's not be doctors and diagnose our loved one. If we think our loved one has a depression or Alzheimer's or one of the other branches of dementia, let's take them to the proper person and find out, because there are things that can be done. Certainly for depression, there are many, many, many things, even to offset some of the Alzheimer's, certainly to offset the loneliness. So, again, there's a theme here of being willing and able to look, and then if you suspect that there is a problem, to address it with the people involved. You know, Mom, I imagine you don't want to talk about this, but every time I call you and I see you on Skype, you're in your pajamas. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You used to be a very excited school teacher. How about we figure out what you might do that you might love to do, so you're not sitting in your pajamas every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And just to make sure that there's not something wrong with you physically, let's get you to Dr. Jones, and I'll call him ahead and let him know that we're interested in having him look and make sure that you're okay, and if there's something wrong, let's handle it appropriately. So how about that, Mom? So again, you look, you create courage, you talk. Sometimes you'll need a team. Sometimes you'll need to bring son Robert in.
Yes.
Say to, hypothetically, your husband, you know, Mom was doing that radio show, and all of a sudden, I don't find her on the radio. What's going on?
Yeah.
So we notice, we talk, we get involved, and we do whatever compensatory things we're able, invited to do as a family.
Perfect pieces of advice, Jane. people need to know so much more about this particular subject matter. So your book, Parenting Our Parents, Transforming the Challenge into a Journey of Love, how did they find this? And do you have a website that they can learn much more about? Would you give them all the information that they need?
Of course. And thank you for asking, because really it might be that, it's 3 weeks from now and someone who's listening to your show goes, I've been putting it off. But Susan made some interesting points on that show with Jane Wolfe Francis. And the website is very simple. It's parentingourparents, in the plural, .org. And at that website, there's a free community which allows people to be part of talking to each other. Once we begin engaging with doing this Parenting Our Parents, or even think about it, I consider people begin to take on some expertise. And so each of us doing it has our own little area of expertise. And the site involves a community who can share expertise. We have a really, really good resource page. We have information about the book. There's even right now a 30% discount to purchase the book. You can buy a hard copy, or you can get sent to your home, or you can download the electronic version. Some people like that. You can send copies to your 3 children if you want to do that through the website. Also, it's at Amazon. But if you go to parentingourparents.org, you can find out, again, how to hire a coach, how to take a coaching course, how to become a coach. If you've listened to this and you think, I have something to contribute, I went through this already, or I may go through this and I'd like to know more about it, or I'm sitting home, 60 years old, I used to be a teacher and a guidance counselor. Maybe I could do something with my skill set and coach other families. And oddly enough, people will come to life when they have a purpose. Speaking of the Japanese, you probably know this, so I will share it with your audience. You probably know this term, ikigai.
Please.
Ikigai is the Japanese word for a reason to get up in the morning.
Right.
And if we don't have an ikigai, then it's so much harder if we've lost a partner, if our children have moved far away, if we haven't created community. So that's why we want to look ahead and plan for the plannable, and think about the fact none of us makes good decisions when we're in crisis. Again, chapter 1 of my book, oh my God, I have to figure out, I was supposed to be back in California. The house was laden with dirt. They both had pneumonia. My mother had dementia. My father was ousted. Where do I start? And they wouldn't even let me into their home to look at that.
Wow.
They were so keeping me at a distance, and I let myself do that until one day, and I don't want that to happen to the people listening into your program or to their friends and loved ones. So that's how come this book came about. And going to parentingourparents.org has a lot of hints of people. We also have a blog. We're on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. You can find all of that if you go to parentingourparents.org, and it's free.
It's wonderful. Well, my guest today has been a very interesting person. Her name is Jane Wolfe Francis.
Parenting Our Parents, Transforming the Challenge into a Journey of Love. And I like to call myself a family love expert. We all can become those, really find out how much joy we bring not only to other people, but really to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think you're a woman that is very wise, and I really thank you so very much for being on my show. There's a lot of information and education that you provided to the people who listen to this show, and I really would love for you to do it again. So keep that in mind, and again, thank you so much for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure as well, Susan. Thank you for having me on the show.